What if everything we thought we knew about our solar system was wrong? NASA has discovered a rogue planet lurking in our cosmic backyard, and it's unlike anything we've ever seen. But it wasn't just the planet's size or speed that shocked scientists. It was the chilling truth hidden in its trajectory. This isn't just a discovery, it's a deliberate message. And its warning to Earth is clear: adapt to an unimaginable reality or face extinction. It started as an ordinary morning at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. The office was quiet, the hum of computer fans and the soft clink of coffee cups, the only sounds that filled the air. Dr. Ethan Harper, a seasoned astrophysicist with over a decade of experience in deep space anomalies, sat hunched over his workstation, eyes fixed on the glowing screen in front of him. He was going through the latest data from the Perseverance probe when something stopped him cold. At first it was subtle, a small blip in the data that didn't fit with the expected patterns. He brushed it off, assuming it was just another glitch in the system. But the blip reappeared, and then it grew. Ethan ran a quick diagnostic, pulling up a fresh data set. As the numbers flashed across his screen, the anomaly became more pronounced. This wasn't a glitch. This was something far more significant. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He zoomed in on the data, adjusting the filters, running another analysis. The object that had appeared in the calculations was too large to be anything normal. It wasn't a comet, it wasn't an asteroid, and it was moving in a way that no known celestial body could. Olivia, Ethan's voice was a breathless whisper. You need to see this. Dr. Olivia Grant, his colleague and closest friend at NASA, didn't hesitate. She was across the room in seconds, her tired eyes immediately locking onto the screen as Ethan pointed at the data. What is it? Olivia asked, her tone cautious. She had seen Ethan get excited about odd data before, but this was different. The shift in his expression told her this wasn't another anomaly to discard. Ethan was quiet for a moment, still processing the numbers that danced across his screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, recalculating, refining the results. I'm not sure, he said, his voice tight with a mix of awe and disbelief. But it's big. Really big. Olivia leaned in closer, squinting at the data. The object, or whatever it was, didn't match anything in their solar system. The mass was enormous, its trajectory completely off course. It wasn't a comet or an asteroid on a random orbit. This was something else. Are you saying it's a planet? Olivia asked, her voice incredulous. It's too large to be anything else, Ethan replied, tapping in a few commands to zoom out on the trajectory map. The object's path was clear now, and it was headed straight toward Earth. His chest tightened as he watched the simulation run in real time. It wasn't a stray asteroid, it wasn't a wandering comet. The trajectory wasn't natural, it was deliberate. The object was heading straight for their planet. Olivia looked at the screen, her brow furrowing as she processed the data. This doesn't make sense. How could we have missed something this big? It's not like we haven't been tracking the outer reaches of the solar system. I don't know, Ethan muttered, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he rechecked the data. But it's moving too fast. It's already in the outer solar system, and the gravitational pull it's exerting is enormous. It's unlike anything we've ever seen before. The object of this rogue planet wasn't just floating through space, it was moving with purpose, heading toward Earth as if it knew exactly where it was going. Ethan's mind raced as he ran the numbers again. The object was massive, almost the size of Jupiter, and it was speeding up. The closer it got to Earth, the stronger the gravitational pull became. This can't be real, Olivia whispered, her voice trembling slightly as the realization began to sink in. Ethan met her gaze, his face pale. I don't think it's a natural object. This is something else, and it's heading straight for Earth. The discovery sent shockwaves through NASA's command center. The data was shared with experts around the globe, and soon the news spread like wildfire through the scientific community. But as they delved deeper into the calculations, the team uncovered something even more unsettling. The object wasn't just moving in a straight line toward Earth, it was accelerating. And not only that, but its trajectory was perfectly calculated. The object wasn't just drifting through space, it was being guided. No natural celestial body moved with such precision. No asteroid, no comet, No planet had ever been tracked on a course like this. Ethan and Olivia worked late into the night, trying to make sense of the data. But no matter how many times they ran the calculations, зрение результат всегда был одинаковым. This rogue planet was heading straight for Earth, and no known force could stop it. "There's no way this is an accident," Olivia said, running her fingers through her hair, exhaustion etched into her face. "This thing is being steered, and whoever is behind it knows exactly what they're doing." Ethan nodded slowly. "We're not just dealing with an asteroid. This is something bigger. But who or what could have sent it here?" The more they dug, the less they understood. The object's path didn't match anything in their stellar models. There were no recorded encounters with rogue planets like this in history, and the object's gravitational field was too strong to be natural. "This isn't just an anomaly," Ethan said quietly. "It's deliberate. Whoever's controlling this, they're coming for Earth." As the days passed, the pressure mounted. Scientists from around the world scrambled to analyze the data. The world's governments were kept in the dark for now, but it was only a matter of time before the news broke. Ethan, Olivia, and their team worked tirelessly, trying to gather as much information as possible. But the object was already too close. Its gravitational pull was beginning to cause subtle distortions in the orbits of nearby asteroids. Ethan's mind raced. If this rogue planet collided with Earth, the consequences would be catastrophic. Massive earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. The planet's mass alone would send shockwaves through the very core of the Earth. But what terrified him more than the planet's size was the message. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something far more sinister was at play. The more they studied the object, the more it became clear. This was no random planet. This was a message, a signal, sent from somewhere, or something, that had control over the rogue planet. The signal had started as a faint pulse, barely detectable, but it was growing stronger by the day. It was unlike anything they had encountered in all of their years of space exploration, and it was definitely not human. Ethan and Olivia spent hours analyzing the data, but as the signal grew clearer, their sense of dread deepened. This wasn't just an astronomical discovery, it was a warning. And then, one evening, as Ethan and Olivia sat at the control desk, reviewing the latest data, the message appeared on their screens. "The convergence begins. Earth will become part of the greater union. Join us or perish." The words seemed to burn into the screen, their meaning undeniable. Ethan's blood ran cold. The rogue planet wasn't just heading toward Earth for a collision, it was a harbinger, a threat. And whatever was behind it wasn't interested in simply destroying Earth. It was offering something else, a choice. Olivia stood frozen, her hand trembling as she pointed at the message on the screen. "What does this mean, Ethan? Who are they?" "I don't know," Ethan replied, his voice low and filled with fear. "But we need to find out, and fast, because if this message is true, Earth is about to face something far worse than a collision. We might be facing an invasion." The countdown had begun. The rogue planet was almost here, and they still had no idea who or what was controlling it. The discovery of the rogue planet spread across NASA like wildfire, quickly shifting from a curiosity to a full-blown crisis. For days, the JPL team, including Ethan and Olivia, worked tirelessly to track the object, gathering more data with each passing hour. But with every new calculation, the stakes grew higher. The rogue planet, now confirmed as a massive object nearly twice the size of Jupiter, was no longer just a cosmic anomaly. It was a ticking time bomb heading straight for Earth. Ethan sat in his office, his eyes glued to the screens as they flickered with incoming data. His fingers trembled slightly as he keyed in the new calculations. Olivia was beside him, equally focused. The tension between them was palpable. They both knew how much was riding on their work. "Everything looks the same," Ethan muttered, rechecking the trajectory map. "Its path is locked in. It's not slowing down, and it's too big to alter with anything we have." Olivia rubbed her eyes, exhausted but unwilling to leave. "We've tried every angle," she said, her voice strained. "Gravitational deflection, orbital adjustments, nothing works. If we try to change its path, it'll just cause more destruction. We can't risk that." The object wasn't just headed toward Earth. It was on a collision course that would cause irreversible damage. But what really bothered Ethan was the nature of the trajectory. It wasn't random. The planet was moving as if it was being guided, as though it had a purpose. The gravitational distortions around it were growing stronger by the day, and there was no way to explain it using any known laws of physics. Whoever or whatever had placed this object on its path wasn't playing by the rules of the universe. For days, Ethan and Olivia pored over the incoming data, but the mystery only deepened. Each attempt to calculate a possible solution led them down new avenues of uncertainty. The object wasn't just a threat to Earth, it was a message. And Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something much more dangerous was waiting in the wings. Then late one night, the message came again. The same cryptic, chilling transmission from Rogue Planet X, now deciphered into full text. The convergence begins. Earth will become part of the greater union. Join us, or perish. The message echoed through Ethan's mind as he stared at the screen, the words burning into him. The object wasn't just a random celestial body. It wasn't even a natural phenomenon. It was a warning, a demand. But from whom? Olivia's voice broke through his thoughts. "What do you think it means?" she asked, her voice trembling. She was no stranger to high-stakes situations, but the weight of this discovery was too much even for her. A union? With who? Ethan swallowed, his throat dry. "I don't know, but whatever this is, it's not a coincidence. The rogue planet is being controlled. It's a message from someone or something else, something that's already out there." As they both sat in the dimly lit room, the weight of the discovery hung over them. They weren't just facing an environmental disaster. They were facing a decision, a choice, one that could determine the future of the entire planet. Hours later, the news began to leak. The media, which had been kept in the dark, was now scrambling to piece together the story. Articles and broadcasts speculated wildly, some suggesting an alien threat, others calling it an unprecedented natural event. But behind the public chaos, Ethan and Olivia knew the truth. Whatever was coming, it was no accident. It was intentional. Earth was being tested, and they had no idea who was behind it. By the following morning, the situation had escalated. NASA's most senior officials were called in for an emergency meeting. The president had been briefed. The heads of the scientific community were on alert. Everyone was talking, but no one knew what to do. The rogue planet was too massive to be destroyed by any of their existing weapons. The object wasn't just a threat to Earth, it was a force beyond their comprehension. Olivia leaned in close, her face drawn with exhaustion. "Ethan, if we can't change its path, we need to figure out why it's here. What's its purpose?" Ethan nodded slowly, turning his gaze back to the screen. "I've been thinking the same thing. If the rogue planet's course is controlled, it means it's part of something bigger, something organized. We need to understand who or what is behind this." Their questions were about to be answered sooner than they expected. Days passed in a blur as the object drew nearer. The rogue planet was now visible to the naked eye, a swirling mass of gas and debris that grew larger with each passing hour. It was no longer just a distant anomaly. It was a threat looming on the horizon. Ethan spent long hours in the control room, surrounded by engineers and scientists, all working to monitor the rogue planet's trajectory. Every time they thought they had a handle on the situation, new data came in, adding to the confusion. There was no pattern they could predict. There was no way to explain it. Then something happened. On the third day of the emergency briefing, as they were scanning for any new data from the planet, something changed. The object's energy signature, once faint and intermittent, became intense, and the signals coming from it were no longer encrypted. "Ethan!" Olivia's voice was urgent as she pulled him over to the console. "Look at this!" Ethan stepped forward, his heart racing. The message from the rogue planet was clear now. It was stronger, more direct, and it was no longer a vague threat. It was a command. "We have arrived. Earth will be integrated. Do not resist." The words flashed across the screen, sending a chill down Ethan's spine. The rogue planet was not just heading for Earth, it had arrived. It was ready. And it wasn't just a planetary body. It was a vessel, an advanced, sentient force, and it was coming for Earth to merge. Integration? Olivia repeated, her voice trembling. What does that even mean? I don't know, Ethan said, swallowing hard, but we have to assume the worst. This isn't just about destroying Earth. This is about something much bigger. They want to join us, to bring us into something we're not prepared for. The words sat heavily between them. Ethan knew the truth, even if it felt too absurd to admit. Earth wasn't facing an extinction event. It was facing a choice to accept or refuse the merging of civilizations, but at what cost? Then, just as the words from the rogue planet hung in the air, the situation turned even more dire. The object was now so close that it blocked out the stars. It was nearly within the orbit of Mars. Its mass was so enormous, so dense, that it had begun pulling at the very fabric of space-time. The Earth's atmosphere was now being affected. NASA's instruments began picking up waves of distortion. Gravitational anomalies were appearing in multiple locations around the globe. Ocean tides started to behave erratically. Earthquakes rumbled beneath the surface. The planet was reacting, and then, without warning, another signal arrived. This one was different. This time, the message wasn't encoded. It came in the form of a voice, a deep, resonant voice that sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. Humanity, your time is at hand. The convergence will not be stopped. Earth will become whole. Ethan and Olivia stared at each other in disbelief. This wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration, a promise, and it was clear now. The rogue planet wasn't just a threat, it was part of a greater plan. Earth was about to be merged, integrated into something larger than itself. But what was this greater union? And how could humanity stop it? These were questions they couldn't answer yet. But one thing was certain. The clock was ticking. The rogue planet was almost here, and they still had no idea how to stop it. As the days passed, the situation worsened. Rogue Planet X, once a distant anomaly, was now a visible threat. Its presence loomed large in the night sky, a swirling mass of gas and debris growing ever closer. It wasn't just a celestial object anymore. It was something more, a harbinger of change, a message that Earth wasn't prepared to receive. Ethan and Olivia stood at the control room, surrounded by a team of NASA scientists, engineers, and military advisors. The rogue planet was nearly within Mars's orbit now, and its gravitational pull was becoming impossible to ignore. For the first time in their careers, the team at NASA wasn't just concerned with an astronomical phenomenon. They were facing a decision, one that would impact the fate of Earth itself. The control room buzzed with activity as specialists poured over the latest data. Scientists in the back were analyzing the patterns in the rogue planet's movements. The astronomers were tracking the object's trajectory. The engineers were still trying to come up with a plan to deflect or alter its path. But despite all their efforts, the one thing everyone knew for sure was that there was no way to stop it. Ethan paced back and forth in the front of the room, running his fingers through his hair. The data they had gathered was clear. The rogue planet wasn't just heading towards Earth, it was interacting with the planet in ways they couldn't explain. The gravitational effects were distorting the orbits of nearby satellites. Tides on Earth had become erratic, and earthquakes had started to intensify. The planet's arrival wasn't just a catastrophe, it was an upheaval. Ethan, we can't keep going like this, Olivia said, her voice tight with exhaustion. We've tried every model. We've gone over every scenario. We can't stop it. If we keep focusing on the planet itself, we're missing the bigger picture. Ethan stopped pacing and turned toward her. What do you mean? He asked, his voice still hoarse with frustration. We need to stop it. We need to figure out how to change its course. If we don't, we're all done for. Olivia shook her head. It's not about stopping it anymore. It's about what happens when it gets here. The trajectory has been set. The message from the rogue planet is clear. Earth will become part of the greater union. It's not just a collision we're dealing with. It's something else. Ethan felt a cold chill run through him as her words sank in. The planet's arrival was only the beginning. They weren't just facing an environmental catastrophe. This was the start of something much larger, something humanity wasn't prepared for. The team's new focus shifted to understanding why the rogue planet was heading toward Earth in the first place. The messages, the signals, the eerie voice. These were the clues that Ethan and Olivia needed to decipher. This wasn't just an alien invasion, it was a plan, and Earth was the target. "Ethan, we need to do something," Olivia said, snapping him out of his reverie. "The world can't stay in the dark. We've been keeping this quiet, but the longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes. The public needs to know. We need a response strategy. The governments, the UN, they need to be involved." Ethan looked at her, his mind racing. He knew she was right. The longer they waited, the more unpredictable the situation would become. And yet, every instinct told him that revealing the truth to the world might only make things worse. The panic, the fear, it could unravel everything. But he knew that silence wasn't an option anymore. "We'll notify the UN," Ethan finally said, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of the decision. "But first, we need to understand more about what we're dealing with. We need to know what's behind this. Who's controlling the rogue planet? We need to understand their plan." For the next few days, the team worked feverishly, analyzing the data they had collected from the rogue planet. They tracked its gravitational disturbances, analyzed its energy emissions, and scrutinized the encrypted signals that had been coming from the planet's surface. But despite all their efforts, they couldn't make sense of it. The messages were too fragmented, too cryptic. Then on the fourth day after the rogue planet's arrival in the inner solar system, the team received a breakthrough. Yuki Tanaka, the head of the astrophysics division, burst into the control room, her face pale with shock. "Ethan, Olivia," she called out, her voice tense. "You need to see this." Ethan and Olivia exchanged a glance before following her to the main console. The screen was filled with a fresh set of data, an anomalous signal that had just been intercepted. This signal wasn't like the others. It was stronger, clearer, and it carried a message. The words flashed on the screen. "Earth, you have been chosen. Your destiny is now bound to ours. Your integration is inevitable. Resistance is futile." The room went silent. Ethan felt his stomach twist as he read the message again. It wasn't just a warning anymore. It was an ultimatum. The rogue planet wasn't just a passing threat, it was a force. "I think we've been wrong about this," Ethan muttered, the realization dawning on him. "The rogue planet isn't coming here by accident. It's been sent, and we're being invited." Olivia's face went pale as she processed the words. "Invited? By who?" Ethan looked at her, his mind racing. "I don't know, but I think we've been looking at this all wrong. It's not a natural disaster. It's not just about the rogue planet hitting Earth. It's about joining something else. Something beyond us." Yuki stepped back, her hands shaking. "I don't understand. What does this mean for us? Are we supposed to let them integrate us?" Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. He had no answers. The truth was, they were facing something they couldn't even begin to comprehend. Whoever, or whatever, was behind this had technology far beyond their understanding. The rogue planet wasn't just a celestial body, it was a message, and that message was clear. Earth was being invited to join a larger union. But at what cost? "Maybe we're not supposed to resist," Olivia said quietly, almost to herself. Maybe this is our chance to be part of something bigger. But is it worth the risk?" "I don't know," Ethan replied, his voice raw. "But the last thing we can do is ignore it. We need to find out who's behind this. We need to understand what they want, and more importantly, why they want Earth." As they discussed their next steps, the news of the rogue planet's arrival spread to the public. Governments were forced to acknowledge the existence of the object, and within days, emergency meetings were held at the United Nations. The world's leaders were in a state of confusion. No one knew what to do. Some believed the rogue planet was a harbinger of destruction. Others thought it was a prelude to an alien invasion. But no one had any concrete answers. The tension was palpable, and all the while the rogue planet inched closer, its gravitational pull continuing to distort Earth's natural rhythms. The planet wasn't just a danger, it was a warning, and it was only a matter of time before they would have to make a choice. But that choice was about to be taken out of their hands. As Ethan sat at his desk, reviewing the latest satellite images of the rogue planet, the ground beneath him began to tremble. It was a faint vibration at first, but then it grew stronger until the entire building began to shake. The lights flickered and alarms began to blare. Earthquakes, Olivia said, her voice sharp. The planet's gravitational pull. It's causing seismic activity. Ethan's heart skipped a beat as he glanced at the readings. The tremors weren't localized, they were global. The rogue planet's arrival wasn't just changing the orbits of asteroids, it was shifting the very core of Earth itself. This is just the beginning, Ethan said quietly, his voice thick with dread. We have to find out more. We have no choice. As the rogue planet grew ever closer, the world watched in a mixture of fascination and terror. The object, once a faint dot in the distance, had now become a massive looming presence in the sky. Ethan and Olivia stood in the NASA control room, watching as the data poured in from around the world. Each new update more unsettling than the last. The gravitational disturbances had intensified, and seismic activity across the globe was becoming more frequent. Earth's natural rhythm was being disrupted on a scale no one could have predicted. But it wasn't just the physical changes that were concerning. The rogue planet, now undeniably on a direct collision course with Earth, had been sending signals for weeks. The cryptic messages had grown increasingly urgent. But what unsettled Ethan the most wasn't the message itself, but the tone of it. There was no malice, no indication of hostility. It was almost as if Earth was being invited into something, but invited into what? The message that had arrived earlier that day still echoed in Ethan's mind. Earth, you have been chosen. Your destiny is now bound to ours. Your integration is inevitable. Resistance is futile. The words were chilling in their simplicity, but they also left something else in their wake. An overwhelming sense of mystery. Whoever or whatever was behind this had been planning for this moment for longer than they could comprehend. Ethan, we need to prepare, Olivia said, her voice breaking his train of thought. We've been trying to figure out what the rogue planet is, but now it's here. The question is, what comes next? Ethan looked at her, his heart pounding. He had no answers. Everything they had discovered about the rogue planet so far raised more questions than it answered. The object wasn't just a celestial anomaly, it was a force, moving with purpose and precision. It wasn't just heading toward Earth, it had been sent. And the messages it had been sending weren't random either. They were calculated. We need to figure out who's behind this, Ethan said, his voice tight with urgency. If they've been planning this for years, we need to understand why. And more importantly, we need to be prepared for whatever comes next. Olivia nodded, but her eyes betrayed her fear. But what if we're not ready? What if there's nothing we can do to stop it? Ethan swallowed hard, trying to suppress the rising panic within him. The rogue planet's influence was already being felt on Earth. Global weather patterns were beginning to spiral out of control, massive storms formed in minutes, and satellites started to malfunction under the stress of the planet's gravitational pull. These were just the early signs. They didn't know what would happen next. Then, in the middle of their discussion, the control room's monitors blinked to life. A new signal had been detected, stronger than any of the previous ones. Ethan and Olivia exchanged glances before walking over to the main console. The signal, now fully decrypted, filled the screen. Earth, you have been chosen. Join us or face extinction. Your future is ours to decide. The convergence begins. The words were stark, almost clinical. Join us. There was no mention of destruction, no war, no signs of conflict, just the cold, unsettling finality of the message. The room fell silent. Ethan and Olivia stared at the screen, trying to process what it meant. If the rogue planet was here to integrate Earth into a greater union, what did that entail? And if they didn't join, what would happen? Was there even a way to resist? Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who had been working tirelessly on deciphering the signals, stepped forward. Ethan, Olivia, I've been running the signal through every decryption algorithm we have. It's unlike anything we've seen before. These aren't just random bursts of radiation or simple commands. This is structured communication. But the language, it's not from any civilization we know. It's almost as if we're being invited to join something beyond our understanding. Ethan glanced at Yuki, his brow furrowing. Do you think it's an alien race? Some kind of advanced species? Yuki shook her head. I don't know. The technology behind this planet, its ability to manipulate gravitational fields and send encrypted signals across space, it's beyond anything we've encountered. If this is alien, it's not like anything we've ever imagined. And we can't just sit here and wait for something to happen. We need to make a decision. Fast. The atmosphere in the control room was thick with tension. Ethan could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This wasn't just about tracking a planet anymore. It was about humanity's future. And every decision they made could have catastrophic consequences. He couldn't ignore the possibility that this invitation might be a trap, a way to lure humanity into something much worse. But how could they refuse? What did Earth stand to lose if they rejected the offer? The fear of the unknown gripped him tightly, and it was growing harder to focus. There was so much at stake, so much they didn't understand. Let's be clear, Olivia said, her voice steady but laced with anxiety. The rogue planet isn't just coming for us. It's here. We've seen the data. We've analyzed the energy signatures. If we do nothing, we could be destroyed. But if we do something, if we accept this union, we have no idea what we're walking into. The choice isn't just about surviving the collision, it's about what happens next. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. I know, and I don't have the answers. But what I do know is that we need to prepare. We need to make sure that if this is an invasion, or something worse, we're ready to face it. The next few days were a blur of activity. The United Nations was finally briefed on the rogue planet, and global leaders began scrambling to prepare for the impending crisis. Despite the panic and uncertainty, there was no sign of any immediate aggression from the rogue planet. It was simply there, orbiting closer and closer, sending encrypted messages and disrupting Earth's natural systems. For now, it seemed to be waiting for a response. As the world prepared for whatever was to come, Ethan and Olivia spent every waking hour analyzing the data. They had gathered every piece of information they could find about the rogue planet's structure, its energy signatures, and the patterns in its trajectory. They even attempted to reach out to the planet, sending a signal back, hoping to establish some kind of two-way communication. But all they received was silence. Then on the seventh day after the rogue planet's arrival, a new message came through. It was different from the others. This time, it wasn't a cryptic text or a distorted transmission. It was a voice, a deep, resonant voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once, filling the room. Earth, your time has come. You are no longer separate. You will be part of the greater whole. Embrace this. There is no turning back. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just a warning. It was a command, a declaration of what was to come. Olivia looked at him, her face pale. What do we do now? Ethan stood still, his mind racing. The rogue planet wasn't just approaching, they were being absorbed. But into what? Into whom? The greater whole, the union. It sounded like something out of a science fiction novel, but this was real. The fate of Earth wasn't just tied to the planet's trajectory. It was tied to the mystery of the greater whole, the forces that were behind it. We have to go to the UN, Ethan said, his voice hoarse with urgency. We need to make the world understand what's happening. We're not just facing a planetary collision. We're facing a choice we have to make together. If we don't understand the stakes, if we don't work together, we'll never survive what's coming. As they prepared to head to the UN for an emergency meeting, the ground beneath them began to shake again. This time, it wasn't just seismic activity. The rogue planet's gravitational pull had intensified, causing a new series of global disruptions. Hurricanes formed out of nowhere. The atmosphere began to shimmer with strange electromagnetic waves, and the magnetic poles started shifting. The Earth was changing, and there was no way to stop it. Ethan and Olivia, along with the rest of the team, knew that the time for talking was over. They had to act. They had to prepare for the unknown. They had to make a choice. Accept the convergence or resist the unknown force that was pulling them into something larger than themselves. But as they headed to the UN, a new realization settled in. The decision was no longer theirs alone to make. The rogue planet, now only days away from Earth, hung like a shadow in the sky. Its overwhelming size, once a distant theory, had become an undeniable presence. Every corner of the Earth felt the pull of its gravity, causing further seismic upheaval. The ocean stirred unpredictably, and the weather was now a chaotic dance of unnatural storms. For the first time in history, the world knew what it meant to live in constant uncertainty. But amidst the chaos, something else was happening. The world was beginning to change. Ethan and Olivia, along with the team at NASA, were standing at the precipice. They had worked tirelessly to understand the rogue planet's purpose, only to find themselves drawn into a mystery much larger than they had ever imagined. The message was clear now. Earth was not simply going to collide with the planet, it was going to be part of something much bigger. The voice had spoken again, this time with greater clarity. Embrace the greater whole. Earth will merge with us. Your resistance is meaningless. These words, broadcast worldwide, had shattered any remaining hope that this was an ordinary cosmic event. The rogue planet wasn't just a collision waiting to happen. It was a force, and that force was going to change the very fabric of human existence. But was it an opportunity, or was it a threat? Ethan stood at the control console, staring at the readings that were now streaming in faster than he could process. The gravitational pull of the rogue planet was beyond anything they had ever encountered. It was as though the planet itself was manipulating not just the laws of physics, but also the will of the universe. As he ran the simulations once more, he realized there was no longer any time to waste. The United Nations had convened a global summit to address the crisis. Leaders from every corner of the world were gathering to discuss their options. The decisions made in the next 48 hours would determine the future of the entire planet. And yet, there was still no consensus on what to do. Some nations believed humanity should fight back, while others wanted to open diplomatic channels. But no one knew what they were up against. "We need to act, and we need to act now," Ethan said, his voice urgent as he turned to Olivia, who was standing beside him in the NASA operations room. Her eyes were tired, filled with the weight of the decision they were all about to face. The rogue planet is almost here, and it's only a matter of time before its gravity reshapes the Earth entirely. If the messages are true, this is no longer just a planetary disaster. It's a turning point for humanity. "I agree," Olivia said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But how do we even begin to understand what's really happening? We've been trying to decode the signals for weeks, and all we've gotten are cryptic commands and threats. What if the greater whole is something we can't even comprehend?" Ethan nodded, his mind racing. "Exactly. We can't assume anything. The rogue planet might be the vessel that's bringing us into this union, but the question is, what does this union mean for us? Are we merging with an advanced civilization? Are we being absorbed into something beyond our reach? And if we don't comply, what happens to us?" The two of them stared at the screen in front of them, showing a real-time simulation of the rogue planet's trajectory. It was headed directly for Earth, and they could do nothing to change its course. They had tried every method, every scientific model they could think of to deflect it, but the gravitational pull was too strong. They were facing a force of nature, one that wasn't just determined by the laws of physics, but by something much more profound. The rogue planet wasn't just a celestial body, it was alive, not in the traditional sense, but alive in a way that defied the very concept of space and time. It was as if the planet had a consciousness, a will of its own, and it was using its power to reshape the universe around it. As Ethan and Olivia continued to pore over the data, a new message flashed across the screen. It was the final transmission from the rogue planet. "The time is now. Earth, you have been chosen. Your future is ours to decide. The integration will begin." The words were final, absolute. There was no turning back. Ethan stared at the message, his heart racing. It was clear now that humanity had no say in the matter. The integration wasn't just an invitation, it was a command. Earth would be merged into this greater whole, whether they accepted it or not. "Olivia!" Ethan's voice faltered. "What do we do? How do we even respond to something like this?" Olivia stood still for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the message. Then slowly she turned to Ethan. "I don't think we have a choice anymore," she said softly. "We can't fight it. We can't stop it. But maybe we can understand it. maybe we can be part of it. Her words struck Ethan with a force he hadn't expected. For weeks, they had been fighting to understand what was happening, to hold on to the belief that there was a way out. But maybe Olivia was right. Maybe they couldn't stop it. Maybe humanity's best option was to embrace the unknown. As the two of them pondered the implications of their next move, the room around them suddenly erupted in noise. Alerts flashed across the screens as seismic activity intensified once more. The rogue planet's gravitational pull had shifted dramatically, and the Earth's crust was reacting in real time. Outside the window, Ethan could see the sky beginning to change. The rogue planet's presence in the atmosphere was distorting the air, causing ripples in the clouds. It was as though the Earth was being pulled into the planet's orbit, its atmosphere beginning to stretch and twist in unnatural ways. "This is it," Ethan whispered, staring in disbelief as the world around him seemed to bend and break. "It's starting." Olivia stood beside him, her face pale but resolute. "We don't have time to wait. If this is truly what they want, to merge us, then we need to make sure we're ready. We need to prepare the world for this. We need to ensure that humanity survives this integration. Whatever it is, we have to face it together." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he looked at her. The gravity of the situation was overwhelming, but there was something else too. Something beyond fear, beyond panic. There was a sense of purpose. It was clear now. The rogue planet wasn't here to destroy them. It was here to restructure the very fabric of human existence. Whether they liked it or not, whether they understood it or not, Earth was about to change. And so with no other option left, the world united. In an unprecedented moment of global cooperation, the leaders of Earth's nations stood together, ready to face the unknown. The rogue planet had chosen Earth, and now humanity had to choose how to face its future. As the rogue planet's gravitational field grew stronger, the Earth's natural systems continued to tremble. But amidst the chaos, something began to happen. The storms, the earthquakes, the tremors, they started to slow. The atmosphere began to stabilize, and the oceans, though still restless, began to calm. It was as if the Earth was being prepared for what was to come, an integration. Ethan turned to Olivia, his expression a mix of awe and uncertainty. "What happens now?" Olivia didn't answer at first. She simply watched the rogue planet grow larger and larger in the sky, the swirling gases and lights reflecting in her eyes. And then finally she spoke. "We wait," she said. "We wait, and we see what happens next." The rogue planet loomed overhead, its presence undeniable. The integration had begun, and Earth, for better or worse, was about to become a part of something much larger than itself.